All right, guys, welcome in. It is championship week here in college football, which means we've got conference championships to go over here, and we've got a whole bunch of good ones coming up as we welcome in. Look at Ross, Benjamin, everyone getting lined up. Bryan, Leonard in the house. Look at Ted. Can you tell this isn't their first rodeo, people? Yes, they are ready to roll here today as we have got some great games to go over here. Really, Ross, I'm going to start with you because your game is the one that has the most still to be determined. And that, of course, involves Alabama. It involves Clemson. It involves SMU. It's going to be interesting watching all Alabama fans root for SMU here. But are they right in doing so? How do you see this big ACC battle going here?
You know, the committee has definitely shown a flavor for the SEC based on Alabama ranking number 11 right now. And they already came out and said it's not like Alabama could go any worse than 11 unless a scenario plays out differently in some of these conference championship games, and this being one of them. Look, Clemson, to me, Joe, they backed into this ACC title game. I mean, this is a team that lost last week at home to South Carolina in a non-conference game. They're a 3-loss team, and they're playing a team that's a 1-loss team, an SMU that's been right up there in the top 10 for the most part in the latter half of the year, in the top 25 all year. 11-1 team whose only loss came at the hands of BYU back in week 3, where they lost a 3-point game to BYU, who finished 10-2, by the way, at home. So, to me, SMU far the better team in this matchup, despite the line and what it says. And I like the fact that SMU, look, with a win, they still have an excellent opportunity to host a first-round playoff game, depending on the results of other games. And a lot of that will hinge on who wins the Boise State and UNLV Mountain West Championship game. If Boise State wins, it's by all indications they'll move all the way up to number 4. And if UNLV wins, then SMU, with a win here, will move up the ladder and will probably host a playoff game in round 1. I just think SMU, I like the way they played down the stretch, 9-0 straight up in their last 9, 7-2 against the spread in those contests. They scored 30 points or more in 8 of those 9 games. The only time they didn't score 30 was in a 28-27 win against Duke, in a game they turned the ball over 6 times, still won the game, and still scored 28 points. So this is a quality team. And by the way, Clemson, their last 4 games against FBS opponents, they've scored 24 points or fewer on each occasion. Give me SMU here on the money line over Clemson and to win the ACC title game and put themselves in a prime position to host a first-round playoff game as well.
Oh, Roll Tide is just, they're all behind. They love you, Ross. They're texting it in now. They absolutely love you. SMU all the way beating Clemson. Nobody wants Dabo crashing a party and stealing a bid. Sit your ass down, Dabo. I'm with you. Now, let me ask you this, Ross, because the question, I've heard it a couple of times throughout the week. You've got Lashley with SMU, offensive-minded guy, loves to run 1 million plays a minute as fast as you can go, up, go, go, go. It's not a great Clemson defense, to your point. But Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator at Clemson, he likes to run a lot of plays too. So you're not a totals guy, but any chance this thing stays under? Because I can't imagine sweating that out.
Well, you know, the Clemson offensive coordinator that you just mentioned likes to run a lot of plays, but like I alluded to, Joe, they only scored 20. They've scored 24 or less in their last 4 against FBS opponents. So although they're running a lot of plays, they're not really productive in doing so. In terms of the total, I really don't have an opinion on that. I do like, I think SMU is going to get their points here. They've been scoring consistently right along against pretty good competition. And I think they at least put up 30 here, Joe. So, I mean, is it possible they hold Clemson to 17 points or fewer? I think so. It's a good possibility. So we'll see.
Yeah, team total SMU. I think that's all correlated there, up and over with you, Ross. Could very well be one of those games where SMU says, yeah, we're here, we belong, and screw you, Clemson. So with you there, it is SMU for Ross, and want to welcome those of you guys in hanging out with us here on this Friday edition of College Football Kickoff Show. It is championship week. And we're excited because we've got plenty of great games, including one tonight. Well, there's a couple tonight, but there's one in particular there with Tulane taking on the Army, and Bryan, Leonard in the house stepping in. I don't know what. Remember the good old days, Bryan, where you just be like, oh, it's a service academy. Let's play an under. I don't even have to watch the game. Let's just play an under. Not so much with this Army team this year. Now taking on a Tulane team that threw up all over themselves last week against Memphis. What are you expecting out of this game here? Is it points? Is it a blowout? What is it?
Well, you mentioned normally playing under. That's what a lot of the people have done so far. Is this line has actually been bet down a couple of points, which I think gives us some value, and I'll get to that in just a second. The Green Wave just had an 8-game winning streak snap last week against Memphis. We faded Tulane in that game with nice success. Main reason has been their ability or lack of ability against quality offenses faced. They have not faced many good offensive teams. They were coming off Navy, Temple, and Charlotte. The Tigers presented a whole new set of offensive problems for the Green Wave, and we saw what happened there. When you take a look at when facing decent scoring teams this year, Tulane has permitted 34 to Kansas State, 34 to Oklahoma, which wasn't even that good of an offense, 33 to Louisiana, 37 North Texas, 34 to Memphis. Army came out of the gate on fire offensively earlier this season, averaging over 40 points a game in their first 7 contests. But they followed that up with scoring 20, 14, and 13 the next 3 games. Now, last week, they outlasted UTSA 29 to 24 and have that big Navy showdown coming up in 8 days. Both teams are excellent running the football and defend the pass very well. While Army rarely passes the ball, they've actually had really good success in that regard. They don't do it very often, but this is something that you have to be aware of when you're facing Army, is they can put the ball in the air. You know, as I mentioned, with the total dropping 3 points to 45.5, and the defenses, at least in my opinion, being worn down this time of year, I expect a higher scoring affair here. After all, Tulane averages 39 points per game, while Army scores an average of 32. If they get anywhere near those averages, this game will be going over the total. I just don't trust this Tulane defense against a team that can move the football. Army hasn't done it lately, but over the course of the season, we've seen what they can do. I'll play the over in this one.
All right, you're looking at the over in this one. I tend to agree with you. I mean, not a lot of, not two teams that don't try to run a ton of plays, but they've been successful in the plays that they have run. I see in Big Daddy throwing out Bryson Daly over 131.5 rushing yards as a prop in that game there. If Army's going to be competitive, his ass better have that many rushing yards. I'll tell you that. Guys, don't forget, if you have a particular game or a question for these guys, drop them in the chat room there. Don't forget the thumbs up and the subscribe button. We'd much appreciate it. Become part of the WagerTalk TV family. We got a great way coming up for you guys to be able to partner with all 3 of these gentlemen tonight, tomorrow, and all throughout bowl season on our very first 12-team playoff. So stick around. We'll tell you how you can do that as Teddy Covers in the house, ready to roll. Teddy, Conference U. Oh, actually, it's not Conference USA. It's Sunbelt. My bad. Marshall it used to be Conference USA. Marshall taking on Louisiana. It feels like a million years ago it was Billy Napier in this spot, but no longer. But here they are again in a conference championship game here, Teddy. Kind of hard to argue with a team that went 11-1 against the number this year. Marshall just covers games. Do they cover another one here?
I mean, that's all they've been doing. You talk about a team 10-1-1 ATS / 11-1 against the spread, the Marshall Thundering Herd this season. And yet you want to talk about a team with no betting bandwagon, despite all of that success. You know, you talk about Marshall and any sports book in Vegas, crickets. And look, It's not like they dominated in order to go 10-1-1 ATS. You know, they're plus 21 at Virginia Tech. They lose by 17. They're plus 40 at Ohio State. They lose by 35. The only straight up loss that they suffered in conference play by 1 point at Georgia Southern, a game in which they led 23-3 with 7 minutes left. You know, found a way to lose it. But in this point spread range, they were still covered. The last 2 weeks, outright road upsets at James Madison, plus 3.5. They won by 2 in double overtime. At Old Dominion, won by 7 at plus 3. So it's not like this team can't win on the road. It's not like the markets have valued them correctly all season. They haven't. And even with that, I'm not looking at the Marshall side in this ball game. Why? Well, 3 reasons. First, even though they've pulled off these road upsets in recent weeks, we do not trust the Thundering Herd defense. They allowed 30 plus in both those games. This is not a quality stop unit. Certainly not when we compare them to Louisiana's numbers. Louisiana's legitimately been able to get stops this season. That's why they've outgained their opponents by about 1.4 yards per play in conference, a full yard better than Marshall has allowed their opponents. So first off, I don't trust Marshall's defense. Second off, Coach Huff hasn't been re-signed. He's clearly flirting with other jobs. Everyone expects him to take the Southern Miss job after the title game here. I don't want my coach flirting for other jobs when I'm talking about conference championship game. I don't want him distracted. And that's clearly the situation for Marshall here. So you have a defense we don't trust. You have a coach who's probably on his way out of town. And then you have this Louisiana team that's really good. All right. There's no understating how good the Raging Cajuns have been this season. I know they lost at home to Tulane, you know, and they lost at home to South Alabama. But 8 of their 10 wins have come by 10 points or more, double-digit margins, because they have a defense. I'll take the defense laying points here, plain and simple. Give me a Louisiana, Raging Cajuns, minus a spot against a Thundering Herd that has been a point spread machine, but I think is a little bit overvalued at this stage of the campaign.
I love it there. All right, Raging Cajuns for Teddy to get it done. Been a hell of a run. Maybe Doc Holliday comes back. Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's not even allowed back in the state, Teddy. I think they ran him out of town a big way there. But Marshall, great season. I'm with you. I don't think I don't think this is the game for them to keep that streak rolling. We do have 2 other games. We're going to go roundtable style for you guys. We're going to break down Georgia, Texas, as well as the Big Ten with Penn State and Oregon here. And if you happen to have a game that you want to talk about, by all means, drop it in the chat room. Any questions for these guys? They'll be more than happy to get to it. And let's kick it off here, Ross, with this rematch. Number 1, Texas. Didn't we see this in Austin against Georgia? Oh, yeah, that's right. Didn't end up well for Texas, mostly because they shot themselves in the foot in the first half of that game. Made it a nice comeback, made it at least interesting in the second half, but now they're in Atlanta. I can't wait to see the makeup of this crowd. You would think it would be all Georgia, but we all know Texas fans travel because they got nothing but money. So what are we thinking here, Ross? 2.5 Texas is what we're seeing. Wow, huh? Is the wrong team favored, you think?
I don't know about that, but I certainly believe that we'll see a lower scoring game here. I mean, Georgia's defense has been not up to snuff to what we normally see from a Kirby Smart team. However, they match up really well against Texas, and they showed that in the first meeting. Yes, Texas shot themselves in the foot a little bit, like you alluded to, Joe, but they still held the Longhorns to less than 300 yards of offense. And right now, as I assess Texas, they're definitely championship caliber defense. As a matter of fact, arguably they're the best defensive team in the country right now. And they've gotten progressively better as the season moved on. And you look at their offense, I don't think their offense is championship caliber. It's I wouldn't call it ordinary, but when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of a 12-team playoff and facing quality competition in a conference championship game against a team that's been there and done that with the pedigree of Georgia, I think they're going to have difficulty moving the ball. I think both teams will have difficulty moving the ball, and I think this will be a lot lower scoring game than people would anticipate. So I like the under in this matchup. It's currently, I'm looking at 50.5, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, But I would have a lean toward Texas and Georgia going under the total. And I'll have the winning side in this game up at Wager Talk later this afternoon. And it's going to be a best bet. So there you have it, Joe.
I'm with you, man. This is the second ranked scoring defense in the country, Texas. Only giving up 11.7 points per game. I'm with you. How in the hell are we getting to 50 in this game unless good old Beck just keeps throwing the ball to Texas and something along those does his best, Jameis Winston? But I'm with you. I do not think we're getting up and over that total there. Bryan, how about you, though? This doesn't feel like the same old Kirby Smart team here. It just, defense has been questionable. Offense they can't run the ball. Georgia can't run the ball, if you can believe that. But neither did Texas in the first game either. So what do you think we're getting in this round two?
You know, if I take a look at this, my numbers, power rating numbers, have Texas 3.5 on a neutral.
Ooh.
You had mentioned this is being played in Atlanta. Is that worth a half a point? A point? Possibly, but as you said, Texas travels very well. But Texas is looking to avenge that only loss of the season to these Bulldogs, 30-15. You know, when you look back, that's the most points Texas has permitted on the season. They've held all but 2 opponents to 17 points or less. That tells you how great this defense has been. The Longhorns' passing attack has been terrific, both offensively as well as defensively. They own a 33-9 touchdown to interception ratio offensively, a 4-18 touchdown to interception ratio defensively. They have allowed through the entire season 4 passing touchdowns. That's just amazing. It tells you how great this Texas defense is. Georgia started the season with blowout wins over Clemson and Tennessee State, but since that time they've only outscored the opposition 327-240. That is not something that you normally see out of this Georgia team. And I mentioned this in the past, that despite having the better talent in most games, they're even in turnovers. They just have not been able to get their way this year like they normally have. They're not as dominant on either side of the ball, and that's something you rarely see for a team that recruits as well as Georgia. There's something going on there. Sure, they've got all the talent in the world, which is why they're in this game, but this is not your typical Georgia team that we've seen the last 5 or 6 years. But Texas being the better team by my power ratings, playing with one-loss revenge. This is the only team to beat them. I like the Longhorns here. I think this is a good bet here on Texas.
Like in Texas to get that revenge. Teddy, let me ask you, because I've heard this debated all week as well. Who are you giving the coaching advantage to here? Because it's not like Kirby Smart always wins the SEC championship. But Nick Saban ain't on the other sideline. It isn't the Saban disciple, which is interestingly enough. But how do you start with that? Who do you give the coaching edge to? And is it going to matter in this game one way or the other?
I certainly don't give us any significant edge in the coaching side, but I'm not giving Sark the edge until Sark actually lives up to expectations. So it's Georgia in my mind with the coaching edge. But Georgia is not a team I have any interest in backing this week. I mean, we talked about it. They're 3-9 ATS this year. They've been an overvalued commodity basically from day one. They're coming off a game, and I'll give them credit because they refused to lose against Georgia Tech, but they're coming off an 8 overtime slugfest. All right. You know, they're not going to be the freshest this week. And certainly they're facing a team that is playing with revenge and a team that hasn't been, there's no understating Texas's talent. So I don't want the team off the 8 overtime. I don't want the team that's been burning their backers all year and been an overvalued commodity. At the same time, we start looking at Texas. What's Texas's best win this year? I mean, they beat A&M last week. Other than that, they missed everybody in the SEC. They didn't play Tennessee. They didn't play Alabama. They didn't play South Carolina. They didn't play LSU. They didn't play Ole Miss. They didn't play Missouri. Their SEC campaign was all the bad teams. Mississippi State, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Vandy, Arkansas, all sub-500 squads. Florida at 500. Their biggest non-conference win, Michigan. Michigan wasn't any good this year. So in my mind, Texas is a little bit of an overvalued commodity in the markets. And I ain't going to lay points with an overvalued commodity. Sidewise, clear pass. I agree everything with what about Russ said with total-wise, however. If I'm playing this game, it'll be the under. We believe in these two defenses. The way Georgia was able to dominate Texas up front in that first meeting, I mean, the way they won that game was blowing up the line of scrimmage, play after play after play. I don't see why they won't do that here. And at the same time, it's not like the Bulldogs are marching up and down the field with an offense that can't be stopped. Under is how I would play this one. It's just a lean. It's not a client play.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia was able to convert those turnovers and the mistakes into points. Texas wasn't in that game, and that was the difference. But, Teddy, it's come up in the chat room a couple of times. I think Ross Huff brought it up, too. Hard to beat teams twice in a row. And I forget, I know Ralph came in on WagerTalk today, and I know, shocker, he had a chart, Teddy. I don't recall what the numbers were, but what does it say about the history of teams facing off for a second time here in this kind of spot?
So the chart, and again, I'm going off memory here. I don't have it in front of me. But you can beat the second team. You can beat the team twice. It happens all the time. Right. We see it in college hoops. We see it in college football. There's no point spread value blindly betting the team that lost the first meeting. None whatsoever.
Yep. There you go. That's what I thought it was. All right. There you got it, guys. We got one rematch in the book. That's Georgia taking on Texas. Now we got another one. And I think this one's going to be, well, it's actually, we got another one coming up. But Penn State taking on Oregon here, which should have been Ohio State, but that's a different story for a different day. Penn State taking on Oregon. This has been a fascinating line movement, Ross, this week. Interestingly enough, I mean, Oregon opened up a little bit higher. Now, of course, it appears that there is some Penn State love in here, down to what, 3.5 is what we've seen. Is Oregon, and I've heard people scream and yell at this all year long, Oregon's not the number one team in the country. It's Ohio State. Well, they beat Ohio State, and I don't see Ohio State in this game here, Ross. So what are your thoughts on this Oregon team? And does Penn State have a chance at the outright win here and the upset over Oregon?
Well, I can make a case, Joe, that I think Penn State will have more urgency and desperation. But just because that's the case doesn't always mean that it gives you point spread value, as Teddy alluded to, in terms of a team playing with revenge in a conference championship game or a playoff game. It means nothing. However, let's stop and think about this and isolate just this situation in particular when we're talking about a 12-team playoff and we're talking about the top 4 teams getting a first-round bye, which obviously any of those 4 teams has an edge when it comes to going all the way compared to the other teams that don't get the bye. Having said that, Penn State right now, I believe, needs a win in this Big Ten championship game to secure a first-round bye. I don't believe that's going to be the case with Oregon. I really think that if Oregon loses this game, barring a 52-0 loss or something like that, win or lose, they're going to get a first-round bye. That's not the case with Penn State. It's not a given. And I think, again, I think this will be a pro-Penn State crowd talking about teams that travel well. The Penn State Nittany Lions faithful is notorious for doing so. And game being played in Indiana, a lot closer proximity for Penn State than Oregon, if that means anything. So I'm going to have a lean here. I like getting the hook here, and I think money that brought this down to 3.5 is sharper type of money, in my estimate, Joe, by what I'm looking at in terms of the betting trends, volume of bets, this money bet in specifically. So I like Penn State here. I have a lean toward Penn State at this particular moment in time, plus the 3.5 against Oregon.
Yeah, this is a fascinating matchup to me here. Tell me, Bryan, Leonard, listen, if you've heard it once, we've heard it a million times. I don't think there's nobody watching this doesn't understand the record of Franklin against top 5 and top 10 teams. We all get it. He ain't going to lose them all, though, so let's just get that out of the way here. So Franklin aside, since last I checked, he's not actually playing in this game. Do you think they have the opportunity to go against those trends and win this game outright?
Well, to his credit, we know he knows what the line is because
Yes.
he blows out the opposition because of that.
He does.
And that's something as a bettor you always want to take a look at. And to be totally honest with you, Oregon's got to feel pretty good that Ohio State got knocked out because playing Ohio State against them for the second time where they played at home and only won by a point, they would have had to been worried about Ohio State even though they got that victory. Now they get to play Penn State. I think they come into this game a little bit high on the hog, if you say. I was a bit surprised when I took a look at my power ratings on this game and only saw Oregon plus 1.5. I really thought I was going to end up on Oregon, but after I started digging into the game a little bit more, I'm looking the other way. Based on how highly ranked the Ducks have been all season, I just assumed that they were going to be a bigger number here, something around 3, but we're getting 3.5. And I think a lot of that has to do with them beating Ohio State and the way they've been talked up all season long in the press. And as bettors, we try to ignore that. We try to look at the numbers, try to look at what we see in the games. And I think that'll put us on a good side here with Penn State. It's not often you get a proven commodity like the Nittany Lions in this price range. After all, they only have one loss in the season, a 20-13 loss at home to Ohio State, a team that at least I thought was the best team going into last week. Penn State runs for 2 yards per carry more than they allow, and they own a terrific 169.34 quarterback rating to go along with a 24-6 touchdown to interception ratio. Oregon comes into this contest undefeated on the season, no doubt about it. They've done what they've had to do, and they've looked really impressive. But a look at their non-home victories this season were over Oregon State, UCLA, Purdue, Michigan, and Wisconsin. All teams that had a down season. The 7-5 Wolverines are the only team that they've beaten on the road this year with a winning record. Oregon at home, totally different story. They've been terrific at home, but away from home, I don't want any part of them here. This game being played in Indianapolis, as was mentioned earlier, that's probably an advantage for Penn State. Just don't trust the Ducks laying over a field goal here. I like Penn State.
Liking Penn State, not trusting the Ducks laying more than a field goal here. Drew Alar, I believe, is a junior. I think this kid's stays at Penn State. I think next year is a very interesting Heisman year for Drew Aller, who can... Listen, Teddy, we've seen it. The only defense I think that he has faced, and Bryan alluded to it, that's going to be anything like what Oregon's going to bring to the table was Ohio State. 12 of 20, $146, and an interception. They scored 13 points. Are we to believe there's going to be anything crazy or different than what we saw against Ohio State's defense, against Oregon, who also has one of the best defenses in the country?
So one of the things that bettors do, handicappers do, all right, we tend to overthink things, all right? You're bouncing around this game, you're bouncing around your head, you're trying to make cases. Penn State is 1-13 in the James Franklin era when they step up in class, all right? We've seen this year, all right, not historically, this year, Penn State stepped up in class against Ohio State. And remember that game, all right? Penn State stopped on downs. Ohio State gets the ball. They got 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And what'd they do? They didn't call a pass play. All they did is run the football and ran out the clock. Penn State couldn't stop a power running game. You look at the USC game. USC had 189 yards on the ground in that game against this vaunted Penn State defense. I'm not sold on Penn State's defense being elite, being ultra elite, being capable of shutting down Oregon. I'm really not. And when you put that together with Franklin's track record, look, Penn State, when we talk about crowd support, I saw there were tickets for $12 for this game. Nobody's showing up. The Penn State guy, they don't want the Big Ten championship. The Penn State fans are going to go to the playoff games. Same story with Oregon. Plenty of good seats still available. Ducks are passed for this better. I want no part of the Nittany Lions. We've seen them step up in class. We know what happens.
Teddy, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you feel there's a coaching edge in this one for Oregon. Am I Close with Dan Lanning or no?
But we emphasize coaching a lot. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's easy for casual bettors to pay attention to. Is coach this? Oh, this coach is an idiot. That coach is brilliant. This coach is an idiot. The vast majority of games on the field are not going to be decided by a coaching decision one way or the other. All right. If Oregon wins and covers this game, I don't think it's because James Franklin is an idiot. I think it's because they're the better of the two teams. So, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, bettors would be better served looking more at matchups and less at this head coach versus that head coach. Now, there are coaches we love in certain roles. There are coaches we love as dogs. There are coaches we love as favorites. There's certainly something to be said for that. But this isn't one of those situations where, yeah, we love Franklin as a dog. No, we don't.
Yeah. Lanning reminds me of Dan Campbell. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get at some points here. And Franklin just feels like he should be the Chicago Bears head coach, because at some point he's going to screw up the clock. He's not going to call a timeout. He's going to screw his team over. Seems to happen every year. And Dan behind the scenes is absolutely in my ear going, yep, he sucks. All right, so there you got it. We got 4 games there, actually 5 games we broke down for you. Tulane Army, Marshall, Louisiana, Clemson, SMU. That was Georgia, Texas, and now Penn State and Oregon. So what we'll do is we'll ask these guys, maybe they have a best bet, a game that they like a little bit more than the rest here. We'll ask them to throw out a best bet, but I do want to remind you, these are 3 of the best at WagerTalk, guys, when it comes to college football. Ross feels like he's on this 15-year run where he just refuses to lose in college football. It's out of control. Bryan, Leonard, and, of course, Teddy crushing it coming into this week once again in college football. All 3 of these guys, by the way, locked and loaded for a game tonight. I would highly suggest you visit their pages over at WagerTalk.com. And while you're there, all 3 of these guys have a crazy profitable record when it comes to bowl season. And right now you can partner up with any one of them, or hell, all of them if you want, for $1.49. That'll get every bowl release from your favorite handicapper, whether it's Ross Benjamin, whether it's Bryan Leonard, whether it's Teddy Covers, guys. You're going to want a partner in bowl season, especially with the very first 12-team playoff. Now would be a good time. Take advantage. $149. Hop on board with these 3 guys, 3 of the best, over at WagerTalk.com. So, Ross, we'll kick it off to you, my man. You have, I believe, a big bet coming up tonight. Folks can visit your page and grab. But what is one of the plays here this week you like a little bit more than the rest?
Well, I'm going to say it. I'm going to have a 5% best bet on the Georgia and Texas game. I gave you the total in the free pick section here today, but I am going to have a client play 5% winning side, Texas and Georgia on Saturday night. Also, like Bryan and Teddy, we're all on this UNLV Boise State game. And by the way, folks, we're not all on the same side. So there you have it. So don't try to guess which side we're all on, because you're going to be incorrect. In any event, a nice run in college football right now, Joe, 130-89, 59%. A lot of people would say, well, I could do that on my own. Well, try doing that for 2 years, folks. If you do, I'm going to be your biggest fan, and I'll back you with every bet you make. And that has made $9,800 over that course of time. By our grading system at WagerTalk. That ranks number 1 at WagerTalk in terms of college football earnings over the last, or during that period of time. And I take great pride in that. You know why? Because there's a lot of great handicappers, including these 2 guys at WagerTalk, folks. And also college football sides, I'm on a 40-21 run this year. Also college football since September 13th of this year, got off to a little bit of a rough start, but 62% since September 13th this year. So a lot of great stuff in college football. Bowl season coming up, college football playoffs, national championship game. We'll have it all right here at WagerTalk.
Love it. All right. So is the SMU and Clemson game one of your favorites there, Ross? What are you thinking? What's your favorite bet?
Well, I may use that as a client play, but it'll be a lower rated selection. But in terms of the rest of, I do like the game that Teddy discussed as well. And again, it puts me when you ask me this question, it's a loaded one because you want to be fair to your paying clients too,
Sure.
right? So I really would be, if there was more games on the board, I would be a lot more receptive to giving you something else. But being that we're just talking 7 or 8 games here, I'm sort of going to have to reserve my comment.
All right. Well, who do you like in the UNLV? No, I'm only kidding with you. Bryan Leonard, welcome in here, Bryan. Continuing to crush it across the board. So tell the folks what you got locked and loaded, ready to go here tonight. Little Birdie told me there's a big play for you coming up here tonight, as well as heading into this weekend. What do you got? What do you got going?
Well, since I know what Ross's play is, you just give me a call and I'll tell you what his play is, and you save you some money. We've got a 5% play going tonight. I've got 2 plays up for tomorrow in college football. College basketball is really starting to come along. I believe I was 3rd in college basketball last year. I've been doing the shows with Trig a lot for our college basketball, and I'll have some. We'll talk college basketball tomorrow on Kelly's show. But really, really nice runs in just about every sport for me right now. And you can get our plays up on the site. We've got these great deals on monthlies, rest of the year. Just save yourself some money and grab a long-term package. For my best bet on the show, I'll go back to this Texas game. And I know Teddy disagreed a little bit with me, but I've watched just about every one of these Texas games, and they have found ways to shoot themselves in the foot, just like they did against Georgia. We had them last week against Texas A&M, and if you watch that game, it was only one good team in that matchup, and it wasn't Texas A&M. Texas turned the ball over when they're going in to score, making bad decisions. Yes, that will happen. Not only do I like Texas as my best bet on this show, I think Texas, at what the current numbers are, I think Texas isn't a bad bet to win at all. This is a team that I've had highly ranked all season long. And yes, you can only play the teams that are on your schedule. But I've been very impressed by this Texas team. And they have 2 quarterbacks in case one goes down, which a lot of these teams out there in college football do not have. So I like Texas over Georgia. And I would not be against anybody who's looking for Texas as a future bet.
There you go. Boom. There it is, conference championship week. And Teddy coming off a great week last week there, week 14 in the college football season, rolling into championship week. No doubt, locked and loaded. I would ask you what you like in the UNLV game, but we already have 2 guys that swear they're going to tell everyone else their picks. So you can get that at your page here tonight, but what else you got locked and loaded, ready to go this weekend?
Sure. I'll give you guys an opinion on a game we haven't talked about. I do lean Iowa State against Arizona State. Iowa State plus 1.5 available right now. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. If the number goes up, I'm likely to pull the trigger between now and kickoff. I think Iowa State is the class of the 2 teams. We'll see if that plays out on the field tomorrow. But there's at least one more opinion for you before we're through. I do have a 4% best bet on Boise UNLV tonight. I'm locked and loaded with the MAC championship game winner tomorrow. 80% college football run. We opened up last year. 71% college football through New Year last year. I had a crappy New Year's Day that I haven't forgotten, and we'll get some back this year. But we opened up bowl season great. Last year had a great December going into bowl season. I expect more of the same this year. The NFL has been really good. 67% NFL run coming into the weekend. College hoops has been good. Won our lid lifter last night, 26-8, dating back to last March in college basketball. The only thing that stunk for me late is the NBA, and I'm passing on the NBA tonight, and I'm passing tomorrow. I'm gonna give it a couple of days. Visit my page, wt.buzz/TC. Check out everything I've got at WagerTalk.com. But really, this bowl deal is something to take advantage of. Yeah. If you want every sport, the December to Remember package, just $199, so it's $50 more than just bowls, but you get every play every day in every sport. 2 great deals right now on my page at WagerTalk.com.
Can't go wrong there, guys. 2 opportunities, whether college football and bowl games and the playoffs are your thing, or if you want all access style, $199, great opportunity over at Ross Benjamin's page, Bryan Leonard's page, as well as Teddy Cover's page. So we got plenty more college football still to come here I'm looking so forward to hearing people bitch and moan next week about the rankings and who's playing who. It should be so much fun. And we'll be back for it here, guys, again next week. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, become part of that WagerTalk TV family. But more importantly, stick around. We got college basketball, the tip-off show coming up here in about 10 minutes. And then 3:30 Eastern time, the NBA tip-off show. We'll take a look at that slate of games here tonight. Much more still coming here on WagerTalk TV. Enjoy the games tonight. Best of luck. We'll see you again soon here on WagerTalk. Good luck, guys.